The year is 1000. At the Althing, Iceland's great assembly, the entire nation is about to change its religion overnight. Chieftains who worshipped Odin for generations are told, convert or go to war. They choose peace, they choose Christ. But buried inside that historic compromise is a condition almost no one talks about today. One law was allowed to survive, untouched. This law outlived the conversion by nearly 200 years, and that wasn't even the most disturbing part. To understand this law, you have to understand the world that made it necessary. A Viking farm wasn't a home, it was a survival machine. Every winter could be the one that broke it. Food stores had to last from October to April, with no guarantee of a good harvest, no backup plan if a storm sank the trading ship. Into this world a newborn arrived, and the decision of whether it would live belonged, by law, to one person, the father. When a child was born, it was brought before him. He looked. He decided. If he accepted the child, it was sprinkled with water, blessed, and given a name. That single act, the naming, changed everything. Once a child had a name, and once it had been fed at its mother's breast, the law considered it a person. Untouchable. But before that moment, it wasn't. There was one detail in this ritual that almost never makes it into documentaries, and it explains a story we're about to tell you. Historians who study Old Norse law point to 3 real documented reasons behind this practice, and none of them were random cruelty. The first was survival. A household already stretched thin by a hard winter might not be able to feed another mouth. This wasn't a decision made lightly. Sagas describe it as one of the hardest choices a family could face. At the second was disability. Norwegian law, the Gulaþing Law, specifically addressed infants born with severe physical deformities. The law allowed these children to be exposed, but only after being brought to a church first. Behind this law was something deeper than practicality, a fear, deeply rooted in Norse belief, that a deformed child might be marked by something supernatural, something monstrous. And the third reason was legitimacy. A child born outside marriage, or whose father disputed the birth, could also be refused. None of these were casual decisions. They were governed by ritual, by law, and, as we're about to see, sometimes overruled by the people closest to the child. You'd think poverty decided everything. The sagas tell a very different story, one where a mother said no. The law tells us what was allowed. The sagas tell us how people actually lived with it. In the Saga of Gunnlaug Serpent-Tongue, a man named Thorstein tells his pregnant wife, Jófríðr, if the child is a girl, she must be exposed. If it's a boy, he'll be raised. Jófríðr disagrees, openly to his face. She argues that a man of his wealth and standing has no excuse for such a thing. It's one of the rare moments in the sagas where a woman challenges her husband's authority over a child's fate directly, and the text doesn't punish her for it. In the saga of Finnbogi the Mighty, a newborn is exposed but secretly rescued by his foster mother. She raises him under a different name, hiding the truth for 12 years, until his own uncle uncovers it. His father, faced with the truth, ultimately accepts him as his son. These aren't isolated stories. Historians count at least 8 separate accounts of attempted exposure across the sagas of Icelanders. It happened often enough to become a recognizable pattern in the literature, a shadow running underneath the stories of heroes and poets. For decades, stories like these were used to explain a much bigger mystery: why so many Viking graves are missing women. That theory just came under serious fire. For years, one theory dominated the field: that Viking Age Scandinavia deliberately exposed more baby girls than boys, and that this shortage of women helped explain something archaeologists had long puzzled over: burial sites with far more men than women, in some cases by a ratio of 9-to-1. Some researchers went even further, suggesting this imbalance was a hidden engine behind the Viking Age itself: men leaving Scandinavia, raiding and settling abroad, partly in search of wives they couldn't find at home. It's a compelling theory. It's also, according to a growing number of historians, built on shakier ground than it first appeared. A recent academic reassessment, published within the last year, goes back through both the written sources and the skeletal evidence, and finds the case far weaker than assumed. The methods used to estimate the age and sex of centuries-old bones, it argues, are less reliable than earlier researchers believed, and many of the patterns once read as proof of selective female infanticide may say more about how modern scholars have interpreted the past than about what Viking Age families actually did. So, which version is true? The honest answer: we don't fully know yet. And that uncertainty isn't a weakness in the story. It's the story. So, what actually survives all this scrutiny? Probably not what you'd expect. Here's what we can say with confidence. Infant exposure was real. It was legal, ritualized, and written into Norse law, right up until the Christian conversion forced it into the shadows, and eventually out of existence entirely. It was driven by hunger, by fear of the unknown, and by questions of family and legitimacy, not by casual cruelty. And it was never universal, never automatic, and never without resistance. A wife could challenge her husband to his face. A foster mother could defy a father's decision in secret. A community could quietly take in a child left to die. The exact scale of the practice, how common it truly was, and whether it targeted girls more than boys, is still being argued over by historians today, using tools the Vikings themselves could never have imagined: isotope analysis, statistical modeling. Centuries-old bones read like pages of a book we're still learning to translate. That's the real story here. Not a simple, brutal past, but a past historians are still actively rebuilding. One bone, one saga, one law at a time. We don't come here to judge the Viking world by modern standards. We come here to understand it as closely as the evidence will let us.